Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, it's time to have a little bit of a look at a card that frankly should be being played an awful lot more than it is. Although having said that, it's only been out a very short period of time, and I believe will be played an awful lot more than it currently is. It's Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star, and it could low-key be, well, I want to say the best of the Prism Star stadiums. And on the one hand, I mean, Thunder Mountain is just utterly broken in Lightning decks. But on the other hand, Wonder Labyrinth could be played in a huge amount of decks of a huge amount of typings. What it does, very simply, is it increases the attacks of non-fairy Pokemon of both players by 1 colorless energy. And that's it. It increases attacks by 1 energy, but as I'm going to show you in this video, that can really hurt an awful lot of decks. So we can start off here by just looking at decks that are going to be able to use this very naturally. We've got Sylveon decks. Now, Sylveon decks are maybe falling slightly out of favour, although to be fair, Lieutenant Surge's strategy should make them a whole bunch better. And you've got Eevee, and you attach an energy, and then you get to evolve straight up. And then with that same single energy, you can search for any free cards, and you just play a little bit of a blocking deck. You play Crushing Hammer to get rid of energy and all things like that, but with the added advantage of being able to use Lieutenant Surge's strategy. So you can play stuff like Plumeria, etc. And the great thing is, of course, that Lieutenant Surge's strategy lets you play 2 extra supporters, Lieutenant Surge plus 2 more. It can be used again with Lusamine, and of course Sylveon is searching you any free cards, so it's not like you're going to struggle to draw into Lieutenant Surge and the 2 cards you want. So time that comes out, I think Sylveon could make a bit of a comeback. And Sylveon is one of these annoying wall, stall, blocking, whatever you want to call them decks, which generally depend on energy denial. Well, you know what's really good about energy denial? Increasing your opponent's energy cost by 1. We could also use it with Gardevoir. Gardevoir's a really nice fit here because Gardevoir is trying to punish you for playing energy. Gardevoir's attack for a base 1 energy, though it could be more, does 30 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. So the more energy that is attached to your opponent's Pokemon, the more damage you will be doing. Yeah. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, because now you're making them attach an extra energy, which isn't just slowing them down, which is kind of hilarious, but it's also meaning that you get to do an extra 30 damage. It's kind of like double fun time. We've got Granbull at the moment. Granbull's a fun little card. It does 160 for a single energy, just so long as you've got 0 cards in hand. The problem is you're not always hitting quite enough damage, and there will be the odd turn where you cannot have 0 cards in hand. But what you do here is just play Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star, and then those turns where you are being a little bit slow or not doing quite enough damage, especially against Tag Team GXs, you're covering yourself very nicely. The one thing I will say is that Granbull does generally rely on Shrine of Punishment to get some extra damage on the field, so it might not be the best option here. And then, of course, we've got the deck over in Japan that is crushing with this, Sylveon and Gardevoir Tag Team GX. Now, I made a video about this the other day. I'll pop a link in the description. It's a great deck, but essentially it aims to play stuff like the Fairy Charms to stop you attacking, or at least stop you damaging with attacks, while then doing 150 to 2-hit KO anything while using Ace Roller, and then using a GX attack to make your opponent shuffle their entire hand into their deck, so they've got nothing. Incidentally, there are ways to get rid of Wonder Labyrinth, we'll talk about that in a bit, but it's going to be much harder to pull that off if you've not got any cards in hand. And of course, you know what's also going to be harder to do if you've got 0 cards in hand? Get enough energy out. So these Pokemon are going to use this card very, very naturally. So the next question becomes, which decks are actually going to be hurt by it? And simply speaking, any deck that relies on a single energy attachment is going to be really hurt. So Zoroark's the obvious one here. Zoroark really relies on attacking with a double colourless energy. And they play the Oranguru from Ultra Prism so they can manage their resources and keep getting it back and all of that, and that's lovely. But at the end of the day, they're still trying to just attach a double colourless every turn. And that is not a recipe for long-term success. Not if there's a Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star in play. Similarly, we could look at Buzzwole, and Buzzwole you're actually getting twice here, because Buzzwole wants to use Jet Punch, 30 to the active, 30 to the bench for 1 energy, but then they want to use Beast Ring to attach 2 extra energy and then be hitting 160. Well, now the first attack goes to 2 energy and the second attack goes to 4 energy, and they're just that little bit short regardless. One which I actually think would be sneaky good against would be Blacephalon. You see, Blacephalon's got plenty of energy acceleration in Naganadel. The thing is, Naganadel accelerates energy to itself, and then Blacephalon lost zones the energy from Naganadel to do the damage. Blacephalon still needs to get 2 energy onto itself. Now, the first Blacephalon's kind of alright, because you can manually attach. And then after that, you've got Beast Ring. But now all of a sudden it's a Beast Ring and an attachment, and this could get kind of annoying. Now, don't get me wrong, you can Beast Ring and manually attach and then lost zone all 3 of them, etc. But it'll still make things a fair bit more awkward. Sure, against decks like Malamar it's not going to make a huge difference because they can accelerate more energy, but against some decks it is going to have a little bit of an impact. The other one I want to mention here is Lost March. Lost March really relies on having Jumpluff attacking for 1 grass energy, and Natu attacking for a double colourless energy. And now with this, Natu needs a 3rd energy and Jumpluff needs a 2nd energy, and it's all getting a little bit awkward. There are going to be decks that aren't hurt by this, but there are going to be plenty of decks that can. And here's the thing, it's not just fairy decks here. One thing that a bunch of people have pointed out, including the lovely Legally Sarcastic over on Twitter, Rayquaza. You see, Rayquaza doesn't really worry about getting the energy. Rayquaza needs free energy on it, but you've got the ability that can get the energy, and you've got Vikavolt that can accelerate the energy. So Rayquaza doesn't really mind having to attach a 3rd energy. But a lot of the time, the decks you're playing against will. Also, I mentioned how Malamar decks aren't going to be hurt by this. Malamar decks can use this. Abuse the fact that you're going to be able to attach extra energy using Malamar to hurt your opponent that can't do it. Or you can do the same thing with Naganadel and Quagsire. Naganadel accelerates energy from the discard pile to itself. Quagsire then moves the energy over to your active Pokemon, and then all of a sudden, you've got this weird deck that shouldn't really be playing Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star, but because you're not worried about attaching extra energy, but your opponent really is, you're actually making use of this. And essentially, fairy decks, this is a no-brainer one-off. Every fairy deck should be playing this, I think that's a given. But by the same token, I think any deck that wouldn't be worried by Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star should be playing Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star. I believe that somewhat wholeheartedly. Now, we do need to mention the whole it can't be gotten rid of with Field Blower thing. Field Blower cannot get rid of it, which means your opponent needs to play their own stadium. But even when they're playing it, they've got to draw into it. So take Lost March. That's an example of a deck I gave that will be probably hurt by this. They're probably playing Sky Pillar because spread decks are not very nice to Lost March, and Sky Pillar stops them nicely. Here's the thing. It's all very well and good going, I'm playing 2 Sky Pillar. Well, you'd better draw into those 2 Sky Pillar, or at least one of them, at the perfect time, because if you don't draw into one of them at the perfect time, you might as well not be playing it. The other thing is, there are a few Pokemon out there like White Kyurem who do have an attack that can get around this by just discarding the stadium. But even something like White Kyurem here, it's not the end of the world, because whenever White Kyurem's discarding your stadium, they're basically saying, well, you know what? I'm actually going to waste my attack getting rid of your stadium, doing very little damage, and I'm okay with that. That sounds like a pretty good result. Now, if anyone's wondering, hang on a second, how are you going to grab this, Lysia? Lysia's fine here. Lysia will search it out. And then there is the obvious, well, if you're playing this, are you playing stuff like Shrine of Punishment, like Brooklet Hill? And the answer is, it's not a huge problem, to be honest. Because the reality is, you're probably just going to be able to play this when you need it, and then play the other stadiums when you need them. So I don't think that's a huge problem, if I'm honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. I think you can just make the decision. Early game with Brooklet Hill, you probably need Brooklet Hill, but then when you're attacking and you set up, in comes Wonder Labyrinth. When it comes to Shrine of Punishment, you got to ask yourself what's more important. Bit of damage between turns, or increasing the attack cost. And whichever one of those is more important, that's the stadium you go for. I don't think we've seen enough Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star. I think we're going to see a huge amount of it as we go through. But I would very much like to know what you think, so please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! But please do remember the most important thing. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about other games. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.